We're going to go from here to 1 million and then 10 million, which is ultimately where we're going, and probably past that, which is 100x from here. Just buy Bitcoin every day or every week, the same amount for 4 years. You're good. Your life is sweet. You're sorted. You've created generational wealth. Larry Fink, the largest capital allocator in the world, coming down and saying Bitcoin is a flight to quality. President Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States, is saying never sell your Bitcoin. I've been locked out of my bank account about 6 times over the last couple of months. He who controls the money controls the world. When we exit into Bitcoin, nobody controls it. If the government comes in, they're like, oh, we need to get to a million Bitcoin. You've got 500,000 Bitcoin and we're just going to take that. They can. Why risk generational wealth that can survive for thousands and thousands of years, as long as there's one node on the network and as long as you're holding your private keys? Why put that risk? Nobody's coming to save anyone. The government's not here to fix anyone's life. Nobody else cares about ourselves more than we should care about ourselves.
You're one of my first 10 guests that I have on a second time. So I usually try to keep a distance between the first episode and the second round that I do. But you have been, I think, my 12th guest ever. One of my first 15, definitely. And I remember we talked in the first episode around the then they join you part, the where are we of like, are they fighting us? Are they laughing at us? Are they joining us? Part and I know I'm not exactly sure what you answered, but I think you said something like we are not quite yet at the then they join you part, and I think we recorded before the Bitcoin ETF. We definitely recorded before Trump was coming up and all of a sudden talking about Bitcoin and all the things that happened in 2024. Where are we right now in the Bitcoin phase? How are you looking at Bitcoin right now, and how has Bitcoin changed since we last recorded about a year ago?
What a great question, Robin. So then they fight you stage or then they join you? I think we're probably still somewhere in between. Like Elizabeth Warren has become vocal once again. I thought with everything that was going on with Trump, they would have just left us alone, gone a little bit quiet. It's not doing her any favors. I believe I saw something from Jamie Dimon a couple of weeks ago as well. So that's like then they fight you. It's the same people. They're still being really argumentative with us. But since then, like you're right, Robin, we have had the ETF BlackRock, Larry Fink, the largest capital allocator in the world, come down and saying Bitcoin is a flight to quality. And then President Donald Trump, like whatever you think of the guy, he's going to be the next president of the United States, is saying never sell your Bitcoin. That's absolutely massive. And Trump came out and he's talked about a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that really the conversation started heading off with Cynthia Lummis and RFK. And Trump's run with it. I think Vivek Ramaswamy got into his ear there. But if he really goes through with that and say they buy 1 million Bitcoin over the next 5 years, then they're definitely here. But there are a couple of things to be very careful about with that. And I think we can dive into that a little bit later in the conversation. So I think we're sort of still like at the then they fight you stage, but we're slowly creeping over to like, it's frickin' party time, man. And it's, I think it's very, very exciting. And the Overton window is 100% shifted since our last conversation.
Really interesting. I think it's also highly depends on where you look, because in America, the unofficial president, Larry Fink, and the official president with Donald Trump, soon to be the official president, now president-elect, are at least from the outside for Bitcoin. I don't know what they actually think about Bitcoin, but they definitely have an incentive to be now for Bitcoin. But if you look to Europe, I don't know how it's in Australia, but in Europe, it's a whole different game where all the politicians are still either quiet about it because they're afraid to speak up about Bitcoin. There are only rare outside politicians that actually speak up about Bitcoin and being pro-Bitcoin. But the politicians in power, they're usually like, Like it's a bad thing, or we don't want it, or we just don't talk about that. So Europe is lagging behind just with the internet they did, and now with Bitcoin again. How do you see the global game theory now playing out, and maybe how it's also in Australia going on, and America seems to be once again ahead of the game and going a little bit faster than the other bigger states?
Yeah, I think America's a little bit interesting. We're actually not going to know what America does until Trump gets into office and what he does in his first 100 days. At the moment, it's some really positive messaging, really amazing conversations around it. And people are saying if Trump doesn't do it, they're going to launch a civil action lawsuit against him to make sure that he implements a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I believe with people like Jason Lowery, who wrote Soft War, probably in Vivek's, in Trump's ear, and talking with policymakers as well as Dennis Porter, there's a really, really good chance that they do it, whether it's 1 million coins or not, if it's just they hold onto the coins at the moment. So that's one thing. Definitely America is heading in the right direction. Australia is a very interesting place. The things that they have in place are fairly favorable, actually, to Bitcoin. So we've got one of the ETFs is the monochrome ETF, and I'm not for buying the ETF. I just like Bitcoin and self-custody. But say the monochrome ETF, for example, they approved it. It's on the CBO stock exchange. You can pay a $500 fee and you can withdraw your Bitcoin into self-custody. So that's something that's really good. It's very Bitcoin focused. And Jeff Yu, which is the CEO of Monochrome, I've had him on the show and talked to him. He seems like a very Bitcoin focused person. So for the ETFs, to have an ETF where you have the option to be able to take it into self-custody, that's very Bitcoin focused. That's really incredible. And that's an exit ramp or an off ramp out of the traditional system into Bitcoin, which is this parallel system that has been built that allows people to gain self-sovereignty freedom. As well as that, they've classed Bitcoin here as property. It would be better if it was classed as currency and there wouldn't be capital gains. But by classing it as property, we've got the rule of law around it now as well. And if you hold it for longer than a year, like, not financial advice, people, talk to your accountant, but if you hold it for longer than a year, capital gains tax discount applies. So you're only paying your nominal tax rate on 50% of the profits, whereas if you're to sell it in under a year, you'd pay your nominal tax rate on 100% of the profits, which is really cool. So that's sort of like favorable. But the media, when the media is talking about it, so that's like what's there in the institutions, and these exist, and the rich, wealthy financial elite that are paying attention to the markets, they can see that those exit ramps exist. But what the mainstream media is doing, it's still magic internet money. It's really bad for the environment. There's a lot of gaslighting, a lot of misinformation, disinformation going around about it, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if you heard about that misinformation, disinformation bill they were trying to push through. Basically, it's just an attack on free speech. They wanted to stop people, warning that the banks may not hold funds, that they're not 100% backed. Or basically, you can talk about the banks in any bad light for whatever reason, even if it was true, which is pretty interesting. The authority was the mainstream media. That got shut down, which is good. But it feels like mainstream media here in Australia is probably a little bit more powerful, or more people watch as a percentage, and they really buy these lies. So the general public, like the people that I care about, at least what we would call plebs, not the ultra high net worth individuals, they're sweet, but the people that are just going to a 9 to 5, rocking up at work every single day, they tune into the radio, they hear Bitcoin's magic internet money, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and they tune out. And it's literally, which is so sad, because it's the solution to all their problems. We've got massive amounts of inflation here, like in every area of our life. They're talking about like the Australian dollar is worth about 60 cents compared to the US dollar. They reckon that could drop down to 50 cents in a short period of time. The answer's there. The answer's here. It's Bitcoin, but they're sort of trying to distract people. And then over in Europe and stuff, you know, I'm so far removed and really focused on Australia and the US, but what I find very interesting is, I was talking about it this morning, is they're same as Australia. They're working on a central bank digital currency. What they're talking about with the central bank digital currency is putting holding limits on it. So you can only hold so much. And then they're talking about if like you reach that, maybe it's say, for example, $10,000 in the central bank digital currency, they'll automatically convert it to a bank account and put it into fiat, which is strange. I'm not sure where they're going with that, but they're also the conversation around privacy. The point of a CBDC is to have total control, total awareness around it. But then they're talking about using the payment rails and other people will be able to build on top of it. And there's like a real brief, ambiguous article, but it sounds like people can build their own mediums of exchange or things on there. So it's like they're trying to take all the power away from this decentralized network that is Bitcoin and offer something else that will be legal. It'll be backed by the state, the government approved, and they're going to push that. And I do hear they make it pretty hard. Just coming back to Australia, and I guess this is the final point. So while like the stock market and the tax laws are fairly favourable, the banks here are not. Like I've been locked out of my bank account about 6 times over the last couple of months. With one of my bank accounts, they limit you to $10,000 a month into Bitcoin, or they say cryptocurrency. They throw them all in together, which is absolutely absurd. I understand, because I've read the books, that when we deposit money with a bank account, we have an IOU on that money. We don't own the money. It's up to them at their discretion whether we can use it or not. Most people aren't aware. And when people are trying to exit, because I hear about Bitcoin, they've finally understood, they've put in the proof of work, they realize that this is the solution to pretty much all their problems, maybe not all of them, but pretty much most of them. And they want to go all into Bitcoin. They're limited to $120,000 per year. That's it. You can't even buy one Bitcoin here in Australia for $120,000 anymore. It's like $150,000. And that's one bank account, and more other banks are doing that as well. And they're just making it very hard to be able to exit that system. They'll put 24, 48-hour delays. Someone very close to me got locked out of their bank account for 28 days trying to move funds into Bitcoin as well. So here in Australia, definitely then they fight you stage, I think, for the average person. I think for the high net worth individuals that have a good financial advisor, they're pretty sweet. And those exit ramps do exist. But whether it's a conspiracy or a coincidence, they're not letting the everyday person know.
Absolutely, and it's the same in Austria. Just can have a small anecdote about that, because I have a bank account, and from that bank account, it's consistently just going up to my to Bitcoin, and there was no problem with that. But one day I got a call from my boss, I think like a year or 1.5 years ago. Oh no, it's now even 2 years ago, because I'm already working 1 year in Bitcoin. And he basically said, hey, the transaction couldn't go through, the salary couldn't go through to you because your bank account has been flagged. And I called the bank, and I called the bank, and they are like, oh yeah, we thought you got robbed out of your bank account because there are so many transactions to Bitcoin exchanges. And I'm like, what? Like,
yeah,
and I did that. And even if you're concerned about that, please inform me.
That's right. Don't just shut down my bank.
Yeah, in my case, they did not shut it down, but they just like flagged me as a bad account, and then other people cannot transfer money to me without providing a phone call because my bank account has been flagged as bad, just because I transferred something to Bitcoin, and that's just reality. That's just something that exists. I don't know if it still exists. It's 2 years now. Maybe that changed. changed. And I also think, as you said, the climate narrative, I feel like since this year it really goes down a little bit. I don't hear a lot about the climate narrative, Bitcoin being bad for the environment. It's still here, but I feel like since BlackRock is here, it actually changed a little bit, and the narrative is kind of also in the mainstream media, I don't know, at least in Europe, a little bit changing. There's also a lot of lobbying now going on for Bitcoin in Europe. There's like TerraHash and other companies that really try to talk with politicians and inform them about Bitcoin, about the actual facts and how Bitcoin mining actually works. That's really great. Like Rachel Geyer, you probably know, she's behind that also. And that's really great that we're moving slowly to that direction, but they're still fighting us. They're still into like, hey, we don't want that. They should stay with us in the fiat system. They should not go out in that Bitcoin. They should not, as Trump said, play with their Bitcoin. They should play with their fiat only.
Yeah, and have fun staying poor, and that's basically the result if you stay in that fiat system. If you're holding cash, and it reminds me of that saying, Robin, like he who controls the money controls the world. When we exit into Bitcoin, nobody controls it. We control the money, so we can control our own world. And they don't want people to be self-empowered. They want to stay self-empowered, and they want to control everyone. But that's the grandness of Bitcoin's design, is it gives you 100% self-responsibility, which is scary. Like, I understand that, especially for the first time. Say somebody had $1 million or whatever sitting in cash, you convince them to buy one Bitcoin. On an exchange, they do that, $150,000 Australian. And you're like, okay, now you need to hold it on a USB device. If you lose those words that you're written down on a piece of paper and that device fails, you're going to lose it all. And then they send it, and you're like, if you send it to the wrong address, you're not getting it back either. You're going to lose it. Like, those things, that's the reality of Bitcoin. And of course, there's education, and it's really not that hard. It's just something to learn. But like, until you learn that, like, you're hearing all those things, you're like, oh, that's so scary. Maybe I don't want to take self-responsibility. But when people actually show up and they front up and they do take that self-responsibility, and they're like, oh, nobody can take it. They can't confiscate it. They can't debase it. They can't censor me. They can't get in the way. No government, institution, entity, person, full stop, can get in the way of me using my Bitcoin for whatever I want, and I can have fun playing with my Bitcoin. Like, that gives them full power to be able to take control of every aspect of their life. But I understand, like, that first step is a little bit scary, and politicians, government, or whatever, of course they're going to play on that. Like, this is safe. If something happens, like that bank, $10,000 a month, here in Australia, Commonwealth Bank is the name of it. They, I think, is like 4 weekends ago, were like double spending in people's accounts. That's why bank accounts were created, to stop double spending, to have a middleman in the way. But that was happening, and then people's debts were still there. But say they had like $20,000 or $100,000 in savings, that was not showing up at all. And they're like saying, trust us, we're safe, it's all good. You don't do that, because we can reverse it, and they fix it. But you're like, okay, you can fix it until you can't. There's a major bank run, or you inflate the dollars away.
Absolutely. And I understand why it's, especially for newcomers, hard. And I talked to some people on conferences that actually came in 2024 to Bitcoin, because you come from the fiat system where you have absolute no power. Like, you are completely at the discretion of the bank. They can decide whatever they want to do with your money. And then to come to Bitcoin, where you have all the power. So like, you go from 0 to 1, and it's a big move. There's like not as small moves in between. There's like the biggest jump you can possibly make from no power to all the power. That's why you see also a lot of mistakes happened. You see also a lot of Bitcoin lost, and especially in the early days. I think now it actually gets better, because there are just so many products, advisories, services out there that makes it way better than it used to be like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and definitely 12 to 15 years ago. So it gets better, but it's still a huge jump. And when I talk with newcomers that are only into fiat right now, they think Bitcoin is a really interesting idea and they want to get in, but just that hurdle of like, what is a seed phrase? Like, what the heck is that? Like, why do I need that? I'm just used to username and password. Now all of a sudden they need a seed phrase. Like, what is that private key? Like, I need to store my public keys also. Like, that there's so much going on with self custody where they never dealt with it. And my hope is that key management in general will be hopefully implemented in more apps, and might be the future of how we get into also centralized apps, how we maybe log into a social media account or log into other things. And I think the only crowd that actually is onto the same crowd than Bitcoin is, because it was in there, is the IT security crowd. They also see the private key as an entry to platforms, to applications, as the best way to secure that. They know that username and password is an old model that we have to kind of replace. How do you see that the private key management, and especially self-custody, the importance of it in this day and age where people are distracted with MicroStrategy, they are distracted with ETFs and all those things?
Yeah, if I can speak to the last point first, Robin, self-custody, I think it is the most important thing. Bitcoin is number go up technology. Like, there's no one denying that. If you hold it for 4 years, even if you buy it at the top, after a 4-year period, the least it's done is 100% return. Some people are talking about diminishing returns. I actually believe there's more upside in front of us than behind us. But over time, Bitcoin is going to go up. So that's one aspect of Bitcoin, and that's what most people focus on. But the revolution of Bitcoin is that it is the first time in human history where we can take 100% self-custody of a bearer asset, of a bearer instrument, a monetary asset. That does come with everything that we're talking about, that fear, that uncertainty. There's someone, the Bitcoin Way, we've both partnered with on our channels respectively, educating people. Tony comes from a cybersecurity background. He used to work for Steve Jobs. Literally like the best person in the world, and the team around him, to be able to step people through that process, to be able to fast track and help him. Or there's amazing resources out on the internet, like BTC sessions on YouTube, man, like his tutorials. If people have got time on their hands to be able to learn it, do that. If you don't have time, like, pay for the Bitcoin Way, or pay for somebody that's already gone through and they've stuffed up. Maybe they've sent their Bitcoin and they've burnt it, or they sent it to the wrong address or whatever. The only way that humanity progresses is by failing forward or learning from our mistakes. The best thing is, though, they don't need to be our mistakes. And Bitcoin's got now 16 years of history. So there are like so many trials and tribulations and things like that to be able to help fast track. But coming back to the point, whether you pay someone to do it, you watch BTC sessions, or you figure it out yourself by reading the books, reading articles online, asking the community, you have to do it. Say you're holding MicroStrategy because it's 3-to-1 Bitcoin or whatever, it's a leverage play. Cool, that's great. But if the government comes in, they're like, oh, we need to get to a million Bitcoin, you've got 500,000 Bitcoin, and we're just going to take that. They can. I'm not going to say that will happen, but it could happen. Same with Wall Street, BlackRock, all the ETFs. It probably won't. But why risk generational wealth that can survive for thousands and thousands of years, as long as there's one node on the network, and as long as you're holding your private keys? Like, why put that risk? Because you need to spend 5, 10, 15, 20 hours by yourself, or 2 hours with an expert to be able to learn to do it? I think it's like if anyone, just take away, just please get your Bitcoin into self-custody, run your own node, and when your net worth grows, learn about multi-sig. But you don't need to do it all at once. You can just slowly step, like, most important. And then talking, I think the other part of your question, Robin, was like, what are my thoughts on MicroStrategy and the BlackRock ETF? I think especially when the BlackRock ETF first came out, BlackRock's not the most trusted institution in the world. They're the largest capital allocator, but they've definitely been up to some dodgy stuff in the past with buying a whole lot of housing and stuff. And maybe not dodgy. They're playing within the rules of the law, but the rule of law favors the rich, the financial elite already. So if BlackRock's coming in and they're scooping up a whole lot of houses and stuff, they're pushing up rental prices for people that are living week to week. That's one of the reasons why I was so vocal against the ETF. And then the second reason is not your keys, not your coins. Like, they control the keys. It only gives you access to the number go up for as long as they or the government wants to give you access. And maybe that goes on forever. Maybe it's not a problem, but I'm not willing to risk it for myself. So like at the start, I was so vocal against it. However, personally, I still wouldn't do it. I wouldn't hold in any ETF, even say like the IBIT ETF here in Australia, where you can pay a $500 fee and you can get your Bitcoin out, simply because I do know how to self-custody and it's easy enough, and we've still got those exit ramps at the moment. But for potentially, in Australia, it's so easy as like for your retirement account as a self-managed super fund to hold real Bitcoin. But potentially in the US, and I don't know their system, if you can choose where you invest your retirement money, whether it's called a pension or 401k account, whatever you call it, and anywhere in the world, if they won't allow you to self-custody Bitcoin, it may still make sense to buy the ETF to have exposure to the number go up side of things if you can't allocate that money to holding physical Bitcoin. So I think they have a part to play. Also, like with Wall Street and stuff coming in, it has given a lot of credibility and respect. Like, we're not worried about Gary Gensler at the SEC being like, Bitcoin's a security or whatever. Like, it's legal now. It's not, we're not going to wake up one day and it's illegal to hold Bitcoin. They could come out and say it's legal to hold Bitcoin self-custody. People like, cool, I don't own it in self-custody. I went boating. Like, what the fuck are you going to do? Like, excuse my language, but if it's in self-custody, it really doesn't matter what games they play or what they do and don't do. You just have control. And yes, it's scary. Yes, you need to take a bit of self-responsibility, but nobody's coming to save anyone. The government's not here to fix anyone's life. Nobody else cares about ourselves more than we should care about ourselves. So when we do that, it's pretty bloody empowering, and really you become ungovernable, untouchable.
100%. And I try to push that as much as possible, because I know there's still a big portion of the audience, too big of a portion of the audience, that just doesn't do self-custody, even though they could do it, with all the different excuses. One thing that I hear this year a lot, which you also touched on, MicroStrategy, it kind of reminds me of the past cycles with altcoins, where people said like, oh no, like I get Bitcoin, I really like Bitcoin, but I want to get more Bitcoin, so I invest in that XYZ altcoin. I actually don't hear that this cycle. Maybe my Bitcoin bubble just is not too big, so I don't hear that altcoin things. But what I hear is like, oh no, like I take half my Bitcoin and invest it in MicroStrategy to outperform Bitcoin and in the end get more Bitcoin. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a crazy theory, but is MicroStrategy kind of the distraction of Bitcoin in self-custody, because it's like that Bitcoin play, Michael Saylor is a big figure in Bitcoin. Could that be a distraction for people?
If they haven't achieved their stacking goal, whether it's getting to 1 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin or 100 or 1,000 Bitcoin, whatever it is, my belief, and it's their money, like, it's your money, it's your choice. Anyone watching this, like, do what you want and live with the consequences or live with the rewards. Take 100% self-responsibility. I don't care. My Bitcoin's in self-custody. I'm good. What I would like people to do, because the more people that hold Bitcoin in self-custody, the faster we get a better world. The more time everyone gets back, the more freedom, like the quicker that we can move into this parallel system. One thing I find interesting with MicroStrategy, what's Michael Saylor say? you're better off to buy Bitcoin. Like, he's saying that. Buy Bitcoin. If it was me, I'd buy Bitcoin. What Saylor do? He sells his shares and he buys Bitcoin, or we think he buys Bitcoin. Like, okay, what is MicroStrategy? It's a leverage play. What a leverage play is good for? People that understand financial markets. People, say like Fred Krueger, that have been in traditional finance for their whole lives. They really understand. Or someone like, like that's really focused in on that. Maybe it's a good play. And for everyone else, some people are going to get extremely lucky. Like it's up 740%, I think, in the last 12 months, where Bitcoin's up like 140%. Those numbers may be a little bit wrong, but it's like something about that. It's like 5x on Bitcoin's performance. That's good. But my strong belief, and again, like do as you will, if people haven't gotten to their stacking goal, like everything else is a distraction. And I'd be listening to what Michael Saylor himself is saying, is you are better off to buy Bitcoin. Because there is going to get a time, and I think very quickly, Tony from the Bitcoin Way says potentially within the next year, people are not going to be able to buy Bitcoin. So they can make all these gains in MicroStrategy and the hopes that they can get out before the top, because it is leverage. So it's going to go up fast, but it's also going to come down a lot harder, a lot faster, a lot quicker is my expectation. And that's fine. Like you can try time the top. That's cool. But if you're trying to pull out at the top and there's no Bitcoin anywhere to buy, like what are you going to do? Like, yes, well done. You've made fiat and now you're stuck in a stock that's falling harder than Bitcoin, so you're worse off. I don't know. I just don't want to have any risk in my life in any way when it comes to wealth. And I guess there's two ways to approach it. Number one as an investor, or number two as a saver. I'm not here to invest. I'm just here to save my time and provide value to the world and like get up and carry on with my day. If someone wants to invest and spend day in, day out looking at charts and what Saylor doing and the green dots that he puts out every weekend at the moment with a $5 billion buy attached, like that's cool. But for me, Bitcoin, it's a cheat code, man. It's easy. Earn fiat, send it to the exchange, buy Bitcoin, move it to a hardware wallet. That's it. And I don't need to worry about up, down, or sideways. I know one Bitcoin is going to be one Bitcoin.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin Way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty.
Yeah, that's a great point actually, because I come from the stock world. I come from the world of investing in stocks, and one thing I definitely want to say: if you have Bitcoin, you have to do your research once, but you don't actually have to keep up with the news too much. Like if you're just like, oh, I know why Bitcoin is valuable. There, you don't have to keep up every day with the news or what people are saying about Bitcoin. That's different for stocks. If you're buying a stock, and that's a fair game, and I probably get back to stocks in like 5-10 years when Bitcoin is more mature and maybe the diminishing returns is actually hitting. I also, like you, I don't think right now the diminishing returns is just BS. We about to hit that suddenly phase, but maybe a little bit after the suddenly phase, maybe with like 10% of the net worth. I play a little bit around with stocks because it's a lot of fun for me, and I was into that before. But what you have to do is to research that stock, and you have to keep up with the news. You have to keep up what the management team is saying. You have to keep up what the CEO is saying and what they're doing, and listen to the podcast they are doing. So it's a work. Like being an investor in companies, it's not passive. You have to stay active. You have to keep up with everything, and it's a part-time job that you are doing. And I opted out of that game, knowingly that I will opt in that game again once it makes sense for me. Right now, nothing else than just Bitcoin in self-custody makes sense, in my opinion. And so keep that in mind. If you invest in MicroStrategy, you're not investing in a leveraged Bitcoin play. You're investing in a company with management teams, with centralized risks. And there's a great video that Michael Saylor actually did about the risks of different assets. I think he went through stocks, real estate, and some other assets of like, what are the risks involved? And I think he gives like a 30-minute answer to what are the risks involved with any company. Just listen to that 30 minutes and then maybe rethink of like how much you really want to invest in a stock, even if it's MicroStrategy and even if it's a Bitcoin play, and how much you want to be in a Bitcoin self-custody. But as Sean said, it's your money, it's your decision in the end of the day. But I just know what I like to do.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, Robin, as well, and people like, do as you will. It's your life. I truly understand, because my own lived experience is focusing on Bitcoin and self-custody. My life's amazing and it continues to get better. And the reason being is because Bitcoin is an on-the-go up technology when it's in self-custody. It's freedom technology as well. But every time we buy Bitcoin, we're like leveraging future free time that we have like in the future. So if people are coming into it the way that I approach it from a saver, I'm saving the work that I do today so that I have more time in the future. By focusing on Bitcoin now, getting to the goal, whether it's 0.11, 10, 100, 500,000 like Saylor, like whatever that stack goal is, then you've got time, the capacity, like you're saying, Robin, it's a part-time job investing. Like sort your time out first, and Bitcoin sorts your time out first. And then once you've done that, then you can go play with whatever it is. Until then, do as you will. But for me, it's just eyes on the prize.
100%. You also said it, and I said it also, with the diminishing returns. There's a lot of theories out there that say there will come diminishing returns. Saylor's model is kind of like that. There is the power law that is kind of following that same trend. I have a hard time believing that if we see that we are so small and so early, and we're seeing those rapid developments right now with the strategic reserve, that we could hit that suddenly phase. And I just talked a few episodes ago with Parker Lewis about when are we hitting the suddenly phase? What does he look at when we come from gradually then suddenly? Because I think we're still in the gradually phase. How do you look at the future development adoption rate of Bitcoin?
There's this word, Robin, that's thrown around all the time, game theory. When game theory plays out, oh baby, like, mate, holy cow, like literally the most powerful country in the world, militarily wise, economically, is the United States. They're whether it happens or not, they're talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve asset. Instead of holding gold as a strategic reserve asset, which has been done for thousands of years, Bitcoin's only 15, 16 years old now, and it's at a $1.89 trillion market cap today. The world monetary supply is like 900 trillion. To think that if they go out and actually start accumulating 1 million Bitcoin, we're not just going to go like this. And then when other countries see that we start going like this, then we just keep going up and up and up. Like Bhutan was mining like 1 billion dollars in Bitcoin secretly before they got found out. I'm pretty convinced that the UAE is buying Bitcoin already. There's so many countries and conversations going on around the world, like the work that Samson Mow is doing in orange pilling nation states. These conversations are already happening, and they've been happening for many years. But I think like the catalyst of Vivek getting into Trump's ear of saying, hey, you need to talk about Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin becoming like a presidential topic for the most powerful country in the world when the whole world is suffering from inflation due to what happened in 2020. And there's like individual people doing it. Like, I don't know about you, Robin, but like just as a little bit of a side quest for a moment, it took me 4 and a bit years to orange pill my mum. It took me so long, man. And then every week I call her up, hey, mum, like you got to buy Bitcoin. Hey, mum, you've got to read this book, like read Parallel, read Bitcoin Evangelism, read Beers for Bitcoin, watch this podcast. You know, I've got a podcast show. So I was just like watch this, listen to this podcast with this person. This is what's going on in the news. And like really tapped in. Wouldn't happen. COVID happened. They print an extraordinary amount of money. Took us 100 years to get this much money in the world. In 4 years, they doubled it. Like 100 to 4, and that's happening quicker and quicker and quicker. And that's taken like a couple of years to play out. People had savings and they bought the media lies that inflation's transitory, it's not going to hang around. But now people are feeling the pain of it on an individual level. Companies are feeling the pain of it on a company level. Nation states are feeling the pain on a nation state level, and they can see Bitcoin. They've still got access to the money printer. When the US does start buying, and if they haven't already, they're going to be like, oh, this is serious now. Like this is actually happening. Whether they believe in it or not to have Bitcoin could be the worst decision. Like whatever happened with Germany, I know they're forced to sell and stuff. They should have become a little bit more creative and found whatever way they could to have held on to those 50,000 Bitcoin. But they didn't, and it looks like Joe Biden's approved the sale of 10,000 coins yesterday or whatever it is. Not everyone's realizing what Bitcoin is, but when they actually see that the US starts buying it, they may rethink that. And even if they don't think about it very seriously and understand, they'll just be monkey see, monkey do. And I think that's where we go absolutely insane. That does not mean the super cycle's here. That does not mean that we're not going to have a 50%, 70%, 80% drawdown. I believe the drawdowns are going to get smaller. I still, like I hope for an 86% drawdown, Robin. I fear we're never going to have one again. I hope for it. But at least I'm aware that it potentially could happen and it's not going to shake me out. But I think like we will get to a point where it just goes absolutely crazy. And if we've got like retail's not really here yet. We're seeing the Google search interest go up like a tiny little bit and it's come back down. It's not until like it's really elevated that we're anywhere near the top of the market. And we're pretty much at $100,000, $95,000 as of today, 96,000, whatever it is. But when we're at like 150 or 200,000 and people like piling in, nation states are just hitting the money printer, whatever it is, and they're just gobbling up and we shoot up. Say we went from 200,000 to 500,000 this cycle within 30 days. And then some bad news comes out. Maybe the states is like realizing that it's getting away. So they put out a fear or a FUD campaign and then it crashes. Like expect that. But also on the other hand, like be prepared for it, but don't base everything on like what might happen or what could happen. Like what's in our control now? Like the best way for the most amount of people, if you're new to Bitcoin, is just buy Bitcoin every day or every week, or if it's once a month, the same amount for 4 years. And then after a 4-year period, you're probably going to do it anyway because you understand. But if you only do it for a 4-year period, hold it for 4 years, like you're good. Your life is sweet. You're sorted. You've created generational wealth in that time. But yeah, there's two things. I don't think we're going to go vertical from here to 1 million and then 10 million, which is ultimately where we're going, and probably past that, which is 100x from here. It's not just going to be straight up. It's going to be like straight up and then down a little bit and then sideways, like we had 58K gain for a while, and then probably climb back up. I guess the message that's a bit over the place is be prepared for everything psychologically, but also be prepared that none of those things happen, and what's the best way for you to be able to get the most amount of Bitcoin as quick as possible in self-custody, because that's all that matters. The price does not matter. The amount of Satoshis you have matters. At the moment, it's 1,044 Satoshis per US dollar this morning. So
that will be a crazy moment when it drops under that 1,000 Satoshi mark.
It's so crazy, man. And like even above 100K, one Bitcoin's one Bitcoin. The Bitcoin itself, the protocol, it doesn't think. It's not sentient. It doesn't care if we're at 100,000 or we're at 10,000 or $100 or whatever. But humans, we like to see these things. And we're talking about 100K this cycle, and maybe we could have got to 100K, but China came in, and FTX and 3AC and BlockFi. And that's another reason not to keep your Bitcoin on the exchange. These exchanges go bust, and they go bust in a bad way. It started off with Mt. Gox. It's happened since the start. But it's an exciting time. It's when it gets under 1,000, or where it gets over $100,000, like under 1,000 sats per USD or over 100,000. Just because we're human and we like round numbers, it will make the media. When Bitcoin's portrayed favorably in the media, more people come in, pushes the price higher, and then as the price goes higher, the media talks about it more favorably because it gets more clicks, it brings more people in. We go a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, until I don't know, someone like a nation state says, no, I opt out. Or like Tesla did. Elon Musk said, no, we're stopping accepting Bitcoin. Straight down, And it can happen.
What is the ultimate importance of the Bitcoin price? Obviously, when we talk to actual Bitcoiners who have been completely orange pilled, they don't care about the Bitcoin price. But then at the flip side is like now we are ripping with the Bitcoin price, and my Twitter feed is just full with Bitcoin price signals and everything like that. Then I also see like when the Bitcoin price is in the thumbnail, more people click on it. So just from the data, it seems like even for Bitcoiners, the price still matters a lot because it's just like that curiosity of where it goes. And we still have our US dollar, euros, whatever your local fiat currency is, that unit of account in our head. What is the would say that the importance of the Bitcoin price? I personally look at that a little bit as a scoreboard of how bad the fiat currency is doing. How do you look at that?
Love that. Dude, I love that. I absolutely love that. Just on that point, Bitcoin in Australia hit a new all-time high 3 weeks, I think, before the US did, because we had lost 12.5% over the last couple of years against the US dollar, while the US dollar had lost 25% of purchasing power. So that just goes to show how bad the Pacific peso, the Australian dollar, is here. I really, really like that. It's a scoreboard and how bad fiat's doing. The way that I see the Bitcoin price is a couple of things. I think earlier in my journey, watching the price, once it got to a certain figure, then I knew that I had my time back, which was really cool. Then I could make my own choices and I didn't need to slave away at a 9 to 5. That, for me, was very empowering. As it's gone past that number, and when it dips and it's not dropping below that number, for me, the price is really irrelevant. As long as it stays above that number, like it's good, I'm good. However, what I love about the price now in this day to day is it is the most effective marketing tool to get people to pay attention to Bitcoin. And as you're saying, Bitcoiners don't really think the price is important for themselves after a certain point, and this is the way I perceive it. But as we hit these figures, whether it's 69,000, which is a good meme number, and it's old all-time high, or we hit $100,000, which is something Bitcoin has been talking about for a while. Number one, it brings in new people. Like, it starts the conversation. You can be like, for the first time in history, Bitcoin's at $100,000. Like what the hell? Like, that's crazy. But it's also validating that all the research, all the time, the hundreds or the thousands of hours, we've both put in thousands of hours into Bitcoin now. You're like, my thinking is sharp, it's on point, it's clear, it's concise. And what I thought about through putting in my own proof of work and looking at different models, charts, watching it and seeing how fiat works, understanding the central bank system, which is inherently broken, designed to control, slave, disempower people. When Bitcoin hits these figures, you're like, yes, like I invalidated everything that I thought was right or was on the right path. And that's what I love about it is, number one, like it confirms that our thinking is right or wrong. And number two is it brings new people in. And when new people come in, then we can dive into deeper conversations of Bitcoin is the separation of money from state. It is a tool to be able to free humanity. And not everyone in the world even needs to own Bitcoin for the world to get better for everyone. It's just more people need to use it for a store of value instead of using their house or real estate as a store of value. That frees up more real estate for the people that don't care about Bitcoin. And that's really what I love is it just brings more attention to it. And we're going to see like, say hypothetically we go to $500,000. And then we crash. Some unlucky joker is going to buy at $500,000 and they're going to say, screw this, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and they're never going to come back. And then in a couple more years, Bitcoin's going to be at 1 million and then 10 million. And they're going to be like, nah, it's just going to crash and I'm going to buy it when it's at $300,000 or whatever. And they never get back in. But there'll be other people that see the price going up 100, 2, 3, 4, $500,000 and they buy it and they start reading. And even if the price crashes, which what we did is we hung around for a full cycle through the bear market, put in the proof of work, read the books. Those are the people that are really going to change the world, Robin. They're the kind of people that next cycle, when Bitcoin's starting to rally or before it is, during the bear market, and be like, you need to get some of this. You need to hold it in self-custody. They're going to be the new educators. They're going to be the new people putting on company balance sheets, on pension balance sheets, incorporated into like superannuation or retirement or within government treasuries. I think the price is, like, it's incredible. And like, it's just, man, it's a lot of fun. Like Bitcoin, when it was at $58,000 forever, like it felt like it went on forever. But how cool was the 58K gang? Like just the memes, the engagement, and brought it in. And then once we went past that, and then we hit 69,000, which is the old all-time high. People like, oh, like where are these guys? Like, bring them back, and then we've got someone to be able to blame that they're no longer controlling the Bitcoin price. But it just brings like a level of a joy into it, because I guess when you go down into Bitcoin is that tool to free humanity, to be able to exit the system, to be able to save yourself from inflation. But to come to that realization, you need to realize how distorted and dystopian and tyrannical the whole fiat system is. And that can get really depressive. But when you've got these dopamine hits of Bitcoin going from 58 to 69 to $100,000, it can lift your spirit. And then the whole community comes in there and the media and stuff. And then you become validated. And you can say, I told you so in a joking way or whatever. But it brings the excitement and makes it not so serious. Because anyone that truly understands really doesn't care that Bitcoin's at 100,000. They're probably not selling.
100%, and we are now at the 95K gang. I guess we're having a new gang now. Yeah, I'm surprised how stable it is actually under 100K, and I think the 100K mark will be a big one to hit. It's a number where the mainstream news cycle will pick a Bitcoin price up again. It was the same in Austria when we hit the new all-time high. They just reported on the price. They didn't say anything about it except the price, which was really frustrating that they didn't say anything except, hey, Bitcoin price hit that. And if you invested that amount of money in 2010 in Bitcoin, now you would have that much money. But if you invested from it was so funny how they did it. They picked the top in 2021 and the bottom in 2022 and said, if you invested in specifically that region, you would have lost that much money in Bitcoin. And I'm like, yeah, you really picked the time frame where where you've lost. Look at the chart that you're portraying.
Yeah.
Any other time that is longer than that 1 year, that is longer than, like, let's say, as you said before, 4 years, you would have made money, and a lot of it. So it's interesting. It will be interesting to see where the Bitcoin memes will, first of all, like the Bitcoin media and the Bitcoin memes will erupt from the 100K. I'm really curious what kind of things we will come up with at the 100K. And then the same time, like, how's the mainstream media reacting to 100K? Because we had it at $1, we had it at $10, we had it $100, then 1,000, then 10,000, and now 100K. But yeah, I think the really crazy number that I'm actually looking forward is the 1 million, because I think retail will sleep through that 100K. I don't know if I don't think they will wake up because of 100K. There will be more people waking up, but not the masses. I think the masses will wake up at around 1 million, or around where we probably hit the gold market cap, where we actually go in a really, really big market. But yeah, I hope they wake up earlier, because I want retail. I want the plebs owning Bitcoin, and not MicroStrategy, BlackRock, and all the big institutions.
Yeah.
That's why we have to orange pill the blabs.
Yeah, mate, I'm 100% with it. I feel like your missions is the same as mine. Is if we can get Bitcoin into the hands of the everyday person, the world comes better. With Wall Street, for example, yes, it's not BlackRock owns the Bitcoin. It's all these people, which could just be plebs. I'm sure most of them are high net worth individuals or accredited investors. So there's a lot of people holding it, but it's only one person holding the keys who has total control over it. And that's, I guess, like where my mission comes from, is it's only from yourself holding the keys and having like a network or a decentralized network of people holding the keys that can rise up. Say like all the BlackRock investors or Wall Street investors or whatever, they wanted to vote on to like push a politician or whatever favorably towards Bitcoin, but through donations, and Larry thinks like, no, you can't move your Bitcoin. Well, like then there's an entity in the way, and it really comes down to his thoughts or the regulation or the law or whatever governs him, and stops the true world-changing aspect or the new reality that we could bring in by just using Bitcoin as is intended to hold the keys.
100%. And one thing, it came up yesterday actually in a podcast where I talked with Ken Halliburton from SAS Mining, where he said it was interesting to see that the Bitcoin mining cycle, there's like a Bitcoin mining cycle and there's a Bitcoin price cycle, and he kind of saw the last cycle where Bitcoin mining cycle actually broke, and the hash rate is kind of just keep getting up, even though the Bitcoin price was down, and it was kind of the decoupling there. And he said it might be like a precursor of the Bitcoin price maybe breaking. And I know we said that in every bull run that we hit like a super cycle, or like we're breaking the 4-year cycle thing. I think most Bitcoiners agree that at some point that cycle will break. At some point we will not have those 3 years up, 1 year down, 3 years up, 1 year down cycles in Bitcoin. But now with Bitcoin mining maybe as a precursor, with strategic reserve, with now institutions and so many companies are in there. So like retail is getting kind of smaller in proportion, and like big companies that just have like a 5-10 year outlook and probably are not trading around as much as we've seen with MicroStrategy. They just keep buying. They will not sell. They will not trade around with Bitcoin. Are we now actually might be at the point where this cycle theory might break?
I think going back to my earlier point, like it could at any time, but to base your savings decisions or investment decisions on something that we're not going to know until hindsight, I don't know if that's the wisest thing someone can do. I believe the smartest strategy that's worked for the most amount of people is, if you're just hearing about Bitcoin, again, not financial advice, but if you're just hearing about Bitcoin, whatever you're willing to lose, say it's $100, put in 110. Because then you're like a little bit over invested. You're going to really like catch up. And then from there, just consistently, whatever discretionary income for a 4-year period, at least. And obviously, like, you keep reading and stuff, but you almost don't need to say that, because when people are invested in something or they're putting their hard-earned cash into something, they're going to start paying attention. They're going to understand that it's just something that you hold and you want to get as much from as forever. I think if we start pushing out this narrative of it's a super cycle, it's going up forever, and somebody comes in at 500,000 and it drops down to 300,000, well, it hasn't gone up forever, in that short amount of time, and they just stopped out, that could be detrimental to them. And like every person, Robin, that we lose along the way, it's not just one person, like it's their friends, it's their family. I don't know about you, but for myself, from studying Bitcoin, like the more I know about it, the more I want to share it, or the more I do share it. And I've noticed that with anyone that really understands Bitcoin, is when they really understand it, they will help as many other people understand Bitcoin. And when those people understand Bitcoin, they're going to help other people. So if we're like losing people along the way, that one person may be the best network marketer in the world. That person could be someone like Elon Musk, or, for example, that has like a major audience. Then that ripple effect for positive change, transformational change of the system, of people's lives, is failed because we're talking about something that we have no freaking idea whether it's going to happen or not. Maybe it will. And at some stage, all models are broken. Power law, stock to flow is already broken. Plan B says the stock to flow model is broken. Price chart going like this. Like, everything will break, but all of them are useful. If you can like look at the chart over time, or the power law over time, or the stock to flow over time, all of them go up and to the right. But if the message is it's never coming down again, this is super cycle, and then it does come down, those people are going to be like, these people are just fucking clowns. I'm out of here. They're lying. They're distorted, because we're talking about something we have no idea about, and I'm guilty of it in the past for sure. But I think the way that I'm trying to come across is be like, over time, when you zoom out, Bitcoin will go up literally for the rest of our lives, forever, because they're going to print money forever. However, along the way, it's going to be bumpy as. Just expect that and hope for it, because you get more Satoshis if you're DCA and buying dollar cost averaging every week or month or whatever.
100%. I agree with that. That's really great. I just want to, because I get that sometimes actually in the comment as a question of like, oh, is it a good strategy to get out of some Bitcoin once we're at the top? Then I'm always asking, okay, how do you know it's the top, first of all? Yeah. And how do you know that the cycle are not breaking? So don't try to predict anything in the Bitcoin price, because you can't. We might break the Bitcoin cycles, and we're going up 4 years, but maybe the 5th year is then the down year. So you don't know. we all don't know what the Bitcoin price is doing in the short term. We just know directionally where it's headed. And I think that's the best thing to do. And definitely with orange pilling people, make them aware of that's a long-term play. If you need that money in 5 months, maybe it's a good idea to have something in a more short-term investment, like a US dollar or like something else where you can get it out. Treat Bitcoin as something that you really have in there for the long run. That's your savings account. That's not your checking account right now, because it's so volatile. If you do have that, as I do, I actually have my savings and my checking account, as I'm just 100% in Bitcoin. But that strategy is probably not for most people. But it's something where you want to go. If you want to do that, it's a lot of fun, but it also comes with some disadvantages. I choose to do the 100% strategy, but it's not something you want to tell people that just come in. Like, they would be overwhelmed with that. Just like, let them come slow. I needed 3 years to go over Bitcoin is a scam, and then I needed over 1 year to go from Bitcoin might be something to Bitcoin is really great and I'm going all in. So it just takes time, and be patient, and it can be hard, because especially when you're that Bitcoiner that knows what's going on with the fiat system, and then you know what's going on with Bitcoin, you really want to grab people and get them in as fast as possible. But you have to be patient, you have to be loving and caring to them, and have the empathy to know it's not going to happen tomorrow. They're not going to be a full Bitcoiner tomorrow if they're now completely in fiat. It's a journey as it was with all of us.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
It's an incredible journey, and nobody should, I think, stop trying to help other people understand. But like you're saying, definitely have the empathy. Bitcoin's not a 5-minute conversation. It's not something that you can get overnight. So just be kind and courteous. Like, I dare say, Robin, to get to that point where you're living on a Bitcoin standard, like, you had to put in thousands of hours of research to understand it, and then probably a couple of thousand hours more before you implemented it. And there's time to be able to ponder and see if other people are doing it as well. So it's not going to happen overnight. And I also don't think it has to happen at all. Like, especially if you've got fixed costs. So for, like, personally, we've got cash for the next 6 months for our personal. For our business, we've got about 2.5 years. And then we don't need to worry about the volatility of Bitcoin or whatever. And then everything else just goes into Bitcoin. So, like, for the next period of time, like, we're good. And we'll always just make sure we have that 6-month capacity as time rolls on. Then everything else can go into Bitcoin. And that's like allowing it just to be savings for, like, one day or never or whenever. But it doesn't be like, I need Bitcoin to do a 200x over the next 12 months, otherwise I'm absolutely stuffed. Like, that's we're going to lose people, and like, lose people. A lot of people, Robin, with died of suicide due to financial stress. Like, we don't need to push people in that direction. People don't need to put themselves in that position. There are ways to be able to approach your finances very systematically. And look, people like, oh, Bitcoin's so risky. It's actually not. It's volatile. Volatility does not mean risk. So, like, what strategies can we play? Is that having 6 months or 2.5 years of cash on the balance sheet to be able to ride out that volatility and you're not worried about it?
100%. And we're already over 1 hour. That was so quick with you. I'm really loving our conversations. One topic that I saw from you that has nothing to do, or maybe a little bit to do with Bitcoin, that I want to get into is you tried carnivore as a diet, I think 30 days. And I'm just really curious, because it seems to be like really connected with the Bitcoin community, the carnivore community, even though diet has no direct link to food, but there are some really interesting conversations around that. And I had the offer of Matthew on from Fiat Food, who worked with Seyfrieding on the book. What is your experience with carnivore? How was that 30 days? Are you still going? What is kind of your experience there?
Yeah. Let's frame like how did I hear about it was through the Bitcoin community. And some people would think that health and wealth are not connected. But what's the point of accumulating wealth if you're going to lose your health in the process? Like the three most important things to me, Robin, is health, wealth, and relationships. And relationships first, then health, and then like wealth is the very last. And the wealth can be a tool to get more or have more time or better health or better relationships. So I think they're like very connected, and I think everything is downstream of money. But the carnivore diet, so that was probably 2.5, 3 months ago that I did that 30 days. Out of the 30 days, so say 4 weeks, 2 weeks were freaking brutal, man. I drink like 20 to, not anymore, but I was drinking like 20 to 30 cups of tea per day with 2 tea bags in them each. When I went onto the carnivore diet, which was literally just steak and eggs and then water with electrolytes and salt, I cut out all coffee. So like day one, I woke up, I made a tea out of habit. I drank the first cup of tea. I went to grab the second one. I'm like, oh, I'm not meant to be drinking this. So I like just threw it out over the lawn. Next day, massive caffeine withdrawals. Like it was absolutely hectic. Feels like someone had got a baseball bat and like smashed me in the blood-brain barrier. It was just crazy. And then after that, it was good for a couple of days, maybe for about a week, probably a little bit low on energy at the start. And then 2 weeks in, went traveling, got the keto flu for 6 days. And that was tough, man. I don't feel like I've ever been as sick in my entire life. I was falling asleep during the middle of the day. I couldn't concentrate. I had no energy. I was so lethargic. I just felt like that real sickly sweat. I think like the last time I ever felt that when I was a kid. I don't know, like have you ever been so sick you just feel like sticky and disgusting? So then that went on. But then on day 6 when it stopped, the day after I like felt okay. The next 2 days after that, I've never felt so good internally in my entire life, man. Like I was just running on all cylinders, like a V8 supercharged nitrous inducing supercar, man. I was just like going to the moon. I was just so positive, so euphoric. When I'm going to the gym, the amount of energy, the amount of stamina, the couple of like really amazing things happened. So I got these restless legs, and I've had restless legs for like many, many, many years. I take this pharmaceutical medication, which is called Paralogabin. I can't even pronounce it. Like it's so bad, and it's got a list of side effects that are like this long, like written in like the world's smallest writing that you need a magnifying glass to be able to see. But I managed to cut down to half the amount over like just 2 weeks into the thing, and I've been able to cut down even more since. But did that, like restless legs stopped, stamina went up, energy went up, and due to those pills and knocking my brain around at a really young age, like smacking my head, sort of getting a bit of a brain injury there, and then from partaking in illicit substances and stuff, I really fried my brain. I knew this. I used to be very intelligent as a kid, very sharp, very clear and quick with my reflexes and responses verbally. And then from all that abuse that my body went through, and then the pharmaceutical medication on top, like I really noticed an issue with my memory recall and like just how quick I could pull things out of my own brain and then push them back out there. That really has changed, and it's continued to improve since then. Like absolutely amazing. I don't know if the carnivore diet's for everyone. I don't know, because I'm not everyone, but I didn't just decide to do it. Like I've always trying to improve myself, but about 5 years ago, I tried. I was like first doing like the vegetarian diet, and then I went like hardcore strict vegan, and I've never been so sick in my life. I've never had like the least amount of energy. That diet was absolutely terrible for me. But then, like I believe the world's strongest lady is a vegan, so it like really works for some people. And at one stage, the world's strongest man was a vegan. But for me, not to think about food, like food for me is just fuel. I found the carnivore diet, the meat, steak and eggs, so good. So I did it for 30 days. When I went off day 31, I ate sweet potato, and I can't remember else what I had, but it was so bad. It felt like sandpaper within my intestines and my gut, and it was just absolutely horrible. And I haven't had sweet potato since. But since then, I have tried a couple of things. So I only eat 2 meals a day, lunch and dinner. So that's 14 meals a week. 12 of my meals a week are steak or steak and eggs. Today at lunch, I had 3 bits of steak, 2 eggs. Yesterday, I had, 6 pieces of steak all up, no eggs. But then there will be times, those 2 other meals, where I'll just try other things. My wife makes this amazing red sauce pasta. I like macaroni. I don't think macaroni is good for you. I don't give a shit. Like, my wife makes the most amazing red sauce Italian pasta. It's incredible to have that, every now and then. It's great. And then like whatever other meal, like the other night we had chicken nibbles. It was really, really lovely. And even if I don't feel optimal, because I know those things aren't optimal for me, for it only to be 2 meals like spaced out through the week and the rest of them are absolutely amazing. Man, it's incredible. It's the best thing I've ever done. And sort of like the authority figure on the carnivore diet is Dr. Sean Baker. He's a Bitcoiner as well, and he wrote the book, the Carnivore Diet. I did a podcast with him as well, and I lined the podcast up so I'd have him on the day that I started doing the diet because I wanted to talk to the world's expert in regards to it. He ended up having like a video shoot and stuff, so I couldn't make it till 2 days after. But by that time, I was suffering from the caffeine withdrawals, so I could really like dive in and find out what was going on. But I guess the messaging there is, for me, is really amazing. It worked really, really, really incredible. But I did seek outside information. I read the carnivore diet, the carnivore code, like so many reviews, so many people online was jumping onto X and into the carnivore community, and then watching endless YouTube videos before I went in there, so I knew what to expect. Because people are like, if you don't have any fiber, you're going to get constipated. Exact opposite. For a little while. And then just to know all that was coming, and then to be able to go through and realize that it's going to get like really hard and not give up at that moment, to keep putting in the proof of work, trusting the process, and to feel the best I've ever been. And then, bro, I get to eat steak or steak and eggs every day if I feel like it. Like, man, that's winning. In my view, I would recommend that people research it and test it out. It's not easy. For me, I found it 100% worthwhile.
I love that a lot, the messaging. And there's also, I think that is the most confusing topic for me. There are some things that is just true for like, avoid processed food, avoid sugar, avoid eating right before sleep because it messes up your sleep, at least for me. Get to the freshest food possible, eat whole foods, avoid things where the ingredients list is just like more
numbers,
really long. So there are some common sense things that I think everyone agrees on. But then there's like a really huge plant-based community. There's a carnivore community. There are so many different communities between that. And it's just like, I think a really confusing space, to be honest. And I think people should just try out what works. And I love how you did it. You went vegan, you went vegetarian, you went carnivore, and you just tried out.
Yeah, paleo, keto. I tried all of them, and carnivore just seemed to be the last one. I don't know what other diets are out there. Like I've tried everything I could think of: Mediterranean, paleo, keto, carnivore, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. And then it just works for me. But yeah, it's the same deal, man. Like, it may not work for everyone. It doesn't need to work for everyone. But just because one diet doesn't work, doesn't mean another one won't work. But I also think, like, sorry to like sort of cut in, but it is very confusing, and especially if you're already not in the most optimal health and your body's not talking to your brain, and you don't have the awareness of how your body's feeling and what good health feels like. You may be getting mixed messages going on. So it's not just about eating right. Like, that'll fix most problems, but it's about going to the gym, or you don't even need to go to the gym, but doing like active exercise and moving and coming back into your body and inhabiting yourself and sorting out like your daily routines. Like, so I only eat between 11:30 and 4:30. Usually it's 5:07 now, so I'm going to have dinner later. Usually I'll be finished dinner by 5 o'clock, sort of at the latest. It'll occasionally push out, but like 95% of the time it's between 11:30 and 5 that I've had all my meals. So that's 18 hours of the day that I'm fasting. We don't go to sleep. Most people don't go to sleep. The science, the research shows that we need time for our body to decompress, to be able to work through it and to be able to cool down. Like, we also shouldn't exercise in the evening. It's better to exercise in the morning. Whereas if you exercise just before bed, your blood's really flowing and your body's like ready to go. Like, you're ready to fight, you're ready to party, you're ready to get moving, because that's what you've been doing. And so, like, bringing like different things in, and they may not work for everyone. Maybe it works better for someone, but I also try to go to bed really early at like 7:37, and at 7:37, because the robot vacuum comes out at 7:37. So we're always trying to beat the robot to bed so it can clean the house. But go there and I'll read for like an hour and a half till 9 o'clock. I'll take the dogs out. I'll tidy the house for 10 minutes, just like slowly put things back in order, the cushions and stuff. And that just allows me to like slowly like bring my brain waves down. I've been reading, and it's just sort of like, okay, the next day is ready to go. And then from there, I wake up very early. And like the second that I wake up, walk down the hallway, I open the door so the dogs can go to the toilet, and I do 50 push-ups straight away within about 30 to 60 seconds of waking to be able to start that. Then I go outside, and then I like look into the sun straight away, and then I'll come in here, and then I'll get ready for my video or a podcast or the news or whatever it is. Then I'll go to the gym, and then I'll grab my laptop. And I live here in Queensland, central Queensland, which is like hot as Hades. It is so hot, and it's like going into summer. And I will just spend 4 to 6 hours every day in the sun, shirt off, and don't get sunburnt or whatever, and just like really soaking that up. And if I miss the sun, like for a couple of days or something, I don't sleep as well at night. I don't feel optimal. And I'm not saying like everyone should do that, but I've spent like years and years and years and years trying to like optimize my daily routine. And it sounds freaking boring, waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time, eating within this narrow window, making sure I get enough sleep, getting enough sun, making sure that I'm tidying the house to be able to tidy my mind, making sure all the dishes are put away, or even the dishwasher's stacked in a very particular way so it's all neat, and that everything is neat and focused and on purpose. That allows us, or like even the clothes, like every 6 months I'll go out and I'll buy like 5 new shirts, and then I'll just wear those 5 new shirts for the next couple of days, and on the weekend I'll grab whatever. But I don't need to think about what shirt I'm grabbing. It's on the clothes hanger, and it's just the next one in line. And then I'll iron them on the Sunday, and then I'll put them in whatever order, and that will be the order of the shirt I wear. But I don't need to think about it. Like they're just there. And so I think when it comes to like wealth accumulation or health biohacking or building your relationships, it's what distractions can we remove out of our life so that we can focus and we can provide more value to society. The more value we can provide to society, the more money or fiat currency, they are very different, but we're going to be compensated for that. The more we're compensated for that, the more Bitcoin we buy. The more Bitcoin we buy, the more time that we're going to have in the future, or the more capacity that we'll have in the future to be able to do bigger and better and grander things. Or we may well want to do it, but then we've just got the time, so the wife doesn't need to work a second job. You're both working at home. You're looking after the kids. You're playing with the kids. Now your grandkids are growing up. They don't need to go do a bullshit job. They can go down into an area of study. You can pay for their college tuition or whatever, and something that they really want to do that's going to make impact. Like, why wouldn't you try optimize everything to make it as simple to be able to provide the most amount of value to humanity that you possibly can, so humanity gets better quicker? Because we've got a tool to do that now. And the whole game is get as much, put it in self-custody, rinse, repeat, optimize to be able to get more. And Bitcoin every 4 years gets more and more expensive. So if you're not spending the next 4 years like tweaking and optimizing, I think you're fucked. Like, that's my belief. Maybe people are right, and that's the story I tell myself. And I knew that I needed to sort my own shit out. As I said, I smashed my head around with addictions when I was younger. I fucked around and I found out. And I thought somebody else was going to save me and pour me and all this shit. That's not reality, bro. Nobody's going to save anyone. The only person that cares about as much as ourselves is ourselves. And unless you take good care of yourself, your partner's not even going to give a shit about you. If you're turning this big, fat, lazy slob that whinges, bitches, complains, doesn't put in the proof work, doesn't show up, and doesn't provide value to society, who gives a fuck about you? And why even give a fuck about yourself? And that's sad. There's so many people in the fiat system. It promotes that. It pushes people into it. And I want no more of it. So anyone paying attention to Bitcoin an hour and a half into the podcast, thank you. Thank you so much for putting in the proof work, being willing. It's not an easy conversation. And is this about money? No, money's really fucking irrelevant. Everything that we do is for more better relationships and better health. And the only reason we want better health is so we can have a better experience of here in reality. Earth, it's fucking amazing. For me, God, I believe in God, but I believe in God in the acronym, the great outdoors. Nature, it's amazing. I live on the Great Barrier. I don't live on the Great Barrier Reef, but we look out at the Great Barrier Reef. It's like finding Nemo under there. And we'll go to the rainforest, and it's like this amazing kaleidoscope. Or when I go flying and you're around the clouds or whatever it is, it's just this giant playground. And when we can remove ourselves from that fiat system that keeps us so depressed and suppressed, we can really enjoy it. And God has provided that to us, and then I can go play with God, in the great outdoors. I don't know. That's the point. It's fucking amazing. I want everyone to experience it. I think you do too.
I love that section because it's so great to have the outside financial topics into the podcast, and that's why I love having a Bitcoin podcast, because it allows me to talk about everything else too, because Bitcoiners are actually interested in that stuff, and they really like to hear that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We have an end routine in the podcast of 2 questions. One question is always the same question: what can we learn from you outside of Bitcoin?
Life is short. We are all going to suffer very hard, very difficult times at some stage in our life. Your mental health, your relationships, they're not a nice to have. I think you really need to improve yourself, and personal development is called personal because it is personal. But don't shy away from your dark side. Don't miss having those hard conversations with yourself, with a loved one. If, for example, your wife's kicking and screaming that you're not listening to her, and you keep saying you are, you may think you are, but not in the way that your wife needs you to show up or whatever. Be willing to be able to self-reflect and respect yourself, and work hard and push hard to be the best version of yourself possible. Because when that dark day comes, when that black dog arrives, unless you've got a good network or tools in place to be able to ride through that, it could end really bad. It could be game over. And if it's game over and you take yourself out, you never give yourself an opportunity to make life get better. I've been in that situation many times in my life. And there's just this one thing inside me that just said, no, you can do it. You have to do it. And sometimes there's things outside myself. Sometimes there's a voice inside myself. But then pulling out through those dark places and then like really going that self-development and trying to be the best that I can and understand what was going on in my own mind, the traumatic experiences that happened as a kid that like really fucked me up, and to be able to face those and work through those. Everything I've ever wanted has shown up on the other side of that, because there's no maybe there are still distortions, but every time I identify a distortion, I'm willing to look at it, go into it, and it's only, I think, when we remove that veil can we really go into the next level of consciousness. And the higher the level of consciousness is, like, again, we're compensated for the value we provide to the world. If you're providing value like at a really high consciousness and then you're saving that in Bitcoin or whatever, like it just multiplies more and more and more. I guess for me, like, be the change that you want to be in the world. But if you're having a hard time, like, reach out to someone. There's support networks out there, like lived experience peer work, for example. Talk to a peer worker, somebody else that's been through something similar, not to be able to tell you how to fix it, but just be like, I know, bro. Like, yes, like, fuck. I remember when I went through that and it was fucking shit. But you can see that they've gone through it and it gives you a little bit of hope, because if it's bad, it's not the end. And I guess I just keep telling myself it'll always get better. Like, what else is possible and how's it getting better? Because it may not get better straight away, but if you never give up, I promise you it will. If you never give up, at least that was my experience. And I hope people can gain something from that.
100%. They will really cool. I love that end routine we have where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And your question from the previous guest is, I wonder why it never actually came, the question, because it's a really interesting one. What is the one question you wish people would ask you more?
What is the one question? Am I too late to Bitcoin?
I love that. That's. Do you get that a lot? Is that something you still get a lot, or is that?
No, I get the statement, I'm too late to Bitcoin, but not the question. If someone's asking a question, they're curious. And I believe it's a question that I wish people would ask me more, because you're never too late to Bitcoin, ever. But you need to be able to zoom out.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting. Perfect. Then thank you so much, Sean, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and watch your stuff?
Yeah, G'day Bitcoin on YouTube, GDAY, Bitcoin, BITCOIN. And the reason it's called G'day Bitcoin is G'day in Australia means good day. I think it's always a good day to be paying attention to aligning ourselves with Bitcoin. It's just a network based on truth. And there's set rules and there's no rules. So it's G'day Bitcoin on X at Sean Clarke, Seanclarke 911. YouTube's definitely a lot more serious. X, I'll talk a whole lot of nonsense. I'll engage, put out a whole lot of memes and stuff. But it is definitely a less serious side of me. Fair warning for everyone. And just quickly, Robin, what you're doing, what you've done with the podcast, the guests, the questions you ask, the interviews you put out, who you are in the world, I appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful to know you and have you in my life, and also in part of the Bitcoin community. You're an incredible person.
Thank you so much, Sean. It means a lot coming from you. Also, thank you so much for taking the time here today. And yeah, also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today here. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.